All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Long. I am a site manager with Michigan Rehab Services Lansing District Office, and I would like to welcome you all here today. We are going to discuss the benefit of benefits planning. I do have some guests with me today. I have next slide, Diana. Yep, Diana Maddox with Disability Network Capital Area and Carla Lassiter also with Disability Network Capital Area. They are going to be our experts on benefits counseling today and really give us the bulk of the content this morning. So housekeeping for today. If you do have a question throughout the session, we ask that you find the Q&A section on your Zoom bar there at the bottom. Whoops. And back it up. And
there we go.
Thank you. And we are going to reserve some time at the end of the presentation to address those questions. If we don't, for some reason, get to the questions, we will create answers and make sure that they are delivered to those attending. And also closed captioning is available if you select the CC closed caption button and then click show subtitle. So hopefully everyone can get connected and able to hear us and see us and be here for this event. Thank you for being here. So I am going to go on to the next slide. And I think many of you are familiar with MRS. You may work for MRS, you may be a customer of MRS, you may be a community partner of MRS. And just to remind everyone of our mission and vision in this agency, the mission is to develop customized workforce solutions to businesses and individuals with disabilities. And our vision is to create a diverse and inclusive workforce that unites businesses and individuals with disabilities toward a common good. So how do we do that? How do we accomplish that mission and achieve our vision? We do different things. We assist in obtaining and maintaining competitive integrated employment through training, placement, retention, and many other services to employment. And one other thing is we can also assist with understanding the impact of working on an individual's benefits. And that last box there is why we're here this morning. And why do we need these services? So according to an article on MLive from 2020, I've got to move my screen here just a second. 22% of Michigan residents receive monthly Social Security benefits. And over the previous 20 years, disability recipients has spiked by 39%. So a good portion of our residents receive benefits. And employment can have an impact on your Social Security and some other benefits. And a big factor for why MRS is why we're here is that the employment rate for working age Michigan adults with a disability is 31% compared to working age Michigan adults without a disability is 77%. So that is a large gap that we hope to narrow. And one way that we can do that is by providing benefits counseling. Next slide. When we give our customers the option of benefits counseling, we are giving them the opportunity to be fully informed about what it means to work with benefits and how to make decisions. We give them all the information they need to make decisions that are the best for them. So we know that the MRS case is the customer's case. It's not my choice as the counselor to decide what is best for the customer. They get to have that choice. So providing this benefits information is critical to that. And with that, I want to introduce officially our benefits planning services team that we work with in the Lansing area quite regularly, I would say. And they are going to kind of take it from here and get down into some deeper details when it comes to benefits planning services. So I'm going to turn it over to Diana and Carla. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. My name is Diana Maddox. I am the Deputy Director from Disability Network Capital Area. Here based in Lansing. With me is Carla Lassiter. Carla is a master level rehab counselor and our team lead or coordinator of our benefits planning services. Carla has been doing benefits planning probably close to 20 years. So this is a great chance to pick her brain a little bit, and she's going to be sharing certainly some of the things that she's learned. We're also just really pleased with to be here with MRS because we do support MRS's vision of being inclusive and working on employment. Benefits planning is one of our key services. We do roughly about 100 plans. I think that's what we did last year. Part of that was helping one of our sister CILs who had lost their benefits planner. So we were helping them out, but we do quite a bit of these. And the other part that I want to be clear is that we are a separate agency. We are one of the vendors MRS works with. So, and they're a great partner, but we are our own business. We're looking forward to this conversation. So. Just a brief introduction more about who we are. We are actually considered a Center for Independent Living, often referred to as just simply a CIL. We have federal oversight by the Administration on Community Living, which is basically a federal program that supports individuals with disabilities to remain in their community. I think a close analogy would be like an office on aging. Even though we can serve that population, we're similar, but our focus is disability based. Independent living for us, though, is also more important as a philosophy. It is a philosophy that a person with a disability have the rights to make choices about their lives. They have the right to choose the type of work they do. They have the right to be paid a competitive wage, and they have the right to choose where they live. You know, we refer to disability rights as human rights. Currently, Disability Network has a staff of 30 people, with 4 being credentialed as working center practitioners through Cornell University. We've been doing the benefits part, the specific one regarding Social Security, for about 10 years now. So it's an exciting time for us. The goal of benefits planning is pretty simple. We're not here today to tell you that you have to go to work. You know, that's your choice. That is your decision. What it's important to know is that and understand is that wages will normally impact benefits, and you will normally come out ahead too. But it can be a very scary time. Social Security is much more worker friendly than it used to be. An example that we always like to share, it was back in, I think it was in like the 1980s, a trial work month under Social Security used to be about $75. And today it is $970. So Social Security has worked pretty diligently to make their programming more worker friendly. The other thing, which is an advantage of a benefits plan, is even though you may lose one benefit, which, you know, like food assistance, I'm just going to use that as an example. That's one that usually takes a hit pretty quickly. It can be, there may be other things that you qualify for. So there can be a way to make that up. The focus is on SSD and SSI. SSDI is, is Social Security Disability Insurance, and it's based on your work history. SSI is an assistance program for people with disabilities with little or no work history. They're different programs and they're different rules, and we're going to go down a little deeper in that. This is a side-by-side comparison of the two. What you'll notice is under SSDI, Medicare insurance kicks in after 24 months, and the payment is based on your contributions that you made into the Social Security system as a worker. So the amount can vary. I believe the 842 is the minimum amount that you can receive. But if you were working a higher wage, it's possible for you to actually have a higher SSDI payment. On the flip side of that is SSI, which is a supplemental and security income. It comes with Medicaid. It has more of what I call a fixed payment amount, which is currently $841 a month. But there are different rates if you live like in an adult foster care home, or if you're considered a dependent living with like your family. And again, and this one is actually funded. I'm not sure, Carla can jump in and she may know this, I believe it's tax dollars, but it is not funded through quote Social Security dollars. So. This is two programs that we did want to mention, is because what if happens if you, you do have some work history, but you don't qualify for SSDI. What you may do is qualify for a combination of SSDI and SSI. So what they'll do is they'll put the two programs they can actually put the two programs together to give you a work benefit, or a benefit payment. The other program that we see is called DAC, which is Disabled Adult Child, and it's based on the person's, their parents' work record. And the key part is the child has to be disabled before age 22. The amount of a DAC payment varies because it's based on the parent's work record. One of the things that we wanted to talk about were, we recognize that as exciting as work can be, it's also very scary. And for myself, I used to work for Community Mental Health. I did their employment programs. And so I'm very familiar with hearing people's concerns, and they're legitimate. This is their feelings. And I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about. I think it is, let's give us a chance to try to work through, see if we can work through them. And I think there's some really valid concerns. It's also one of the reasons we do benefits planning, because there's more opportunity to say, this may end over here, but there's another program that over here that can help you. It's reviewing these just really quickly, the fear of losing benefits. I have worked with people who were homeless. They had nothing until they got their Social Security or SSI payment. And so the idea of potentially losing it is very frightening. Some people believe that since they are disabled, it's a cultural issue. They believe that they cannot work and will lose their benefits if they try. So it's just a no. Again, as we talked about earlier, people are concerned about just the ripple effect into food assistance, subsidized housing, et cetera. That will happen. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but but you have to work with it. Losing access to medical insurance. This is probably for me, the primary one that I see the most. People are usually okay with like the food assistance. It's like they understand the need for the medical care. And there is a program now called Freedom to Work Medicaid. So there is something in there. They are afraid to fail and have to start over. It gets really scary. You imagine being 45 years old and you're finally feeling well enough where you want to work, and you're looking at, you want to go back to maybe that accounting job that you had, or, the clerical job that you did. But you're just afraid. So it's something that we can work through. Family members or friends telling them not to work, that happens a lot. People get, don't do that, everyone's fearful. And then sometimes people just simply get used to working or living on a lower income. And So it makes it harder for them to tolerate some of the frustrations of the job. And I know we all know that. We all know about them. So, but these are all things we really just like to encourage people not to be afraid to bring this up. Your MRS counselor, talk to us about this, because let us see if we can work through these. I think the other point that we share and the advantage we have as a Center for Independent Living is then the majority of the people who work here are people with disabilities themselves. We have people here who have been on Social Security. We have had people who work here who have received services from Michigan Rehabilitation Services. And so they really do get the process and understand the fears. So as I mentioned, we have actually 4 benefit planners. We also have a really strong working relationship with our local Social Security office, and they've been really great to work with. They've really supported our efforts. You know, they've helped us when we've had some cases where things got messed up, and we were trying to work out how do we resolve the issues. This is the process. We obtain the records from Social Security to verify their income and source. What that means is they have to sign the releases that come from Social Security, and we have copies of them. I also want to say that as a Center for Independent Living, we are actually one of 15 in Michigan, and I believe most of us have benefit planners attached to their centers. So anyway, but what we also do, so once we send the release of information in, we get it back. We will identify, it'll help us identify any trial work month. So we don't get any records. I always want people to know that we get a summary sheet. That's all we get. So there's not a lot of details or things that we get. We help develop an individualized plan to address their specific job. So one of the things that we're going to want to know is, like, how many hours per week are you thinking about working? Are you thinking about working 20 hours a week and would like to make at least $15 an hour? Or are you saying, I want to work full time and I'm going to be making this much money? So if you can give us a range, that helps us kind of figure out what's happening here. The other thing that we do as part of the plan is that we provide information on how to report income to Social Security and the methods of reporting. That is probably one of the most critical things. We see people get caught into overpayments because they did not report, or sometimes Social Security makes mistakes too. People have reported their income, it gets lost in the shuffle, and you're stuck with an overpayment. One of the things that we will be very clear on telling people is you need to report the income, because they will catch you if you don't. And then what we also provide is an in-person consultation with a written report, and a copy of that report is provided to the MRS customer and the counselor. What to expect from your work incentive practitioner. I'm not going to go over this entire chart. It's just I think it's a great visual. But again, we will show you how to report the income. We will teach you how to do it. We do not report income to Social Security. The next, we will also teach people how to manage their own benefits and their work incentives. And we're going to be talking about the work incentives in a few minutes. We also provide guidance on and support regarding overpayments, but we do not represent individuals in any of the appeals process. And we will work, we're considered an integral part of the employment team, which includes the MRS counselor, job placement, case manager, etc. And we will also provide information regarding along with the disability benefits, questions regarding Medicare, and there's Medicare savings programs that are out there, Medicaid, food assistance, and state disability. And all our services are confidential. And again, I think our fee is actually paid through MRS. So this is all of this is done at no direct cost to you as an individual. For our agency, I can speak for our agency, we provide follow-up services. So if your MRS case gets closed because you're working or whatever, or even if you're not and you're like, you still had questions, you can always contact us and we will be glad to answer your questions at no charge. So the big $1 million question that we're trying to answer today is, can the customer work if they get SSDI and SSI? The majority of the time, the answer is yes. There's always a few exceptions, which is one of the reasons why it really is important to have that individualized plan where you can have that one-on-one conversation. You certainly are welcome to have an advocate or a family member or a support person with you to hear it, and to ask those questions. But we gather all that information. So. This whole next section, I actually called this section. It's really meant to give you more insight into the whole benefits plan and the work in how SSI and SSD think. And I also call it, this is our section on picking Carla's brain, because she's going to be jumping in, because some of this is a little bit more technical than I know about, but it's really an exciting time. So, and this one is SSI and work earnings. And just to review it, it's all income will affect a beneficiary's SSI monthly cash benefit, earned and unearned. Carla, what would be an example of an unearned income?
Where are we at? I'm sorry.
We're on slide 19. And
Sorry about that.
That's okay. What is an example of unearned income for SSI?
So an unearned income for SSI would be such as SSDI. That's a perfect example. It's anything that
It's at the bottom.
work related. Yes. It can also be a pension that you receive. Anything that comes in that isn't work related.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. The SSI benefit calculation. Remember, the one thing to keep in mind with SSI is it's really a form of a cash assistance program. It is not a Social Security benefit. People who get SSI due to their disability or their age of onset of their disability, they don't meet the criteria of having a work history or enough work credits to qualify for SSDI. And so they get that benefit, and this is how they calculate, what will happen, because the earnings after anything over $85 will start impacting what the SSI amount happens to. This is probably the best summary of it. SSI is adjusted in relation to earnings. As income increases, SSI decreases. The one thing to keep in mind with SSI is that, let's say you started working and you worked for a few, 6 months, you started, and this does happen. We didn't talk about this one as much. Sometimes everyone, they're fine until they see that first check where their SSI goes down. And then they panic and they're like, I can't do this, and they quit. The problem is that following month, their income is not going to go back up right away. It will go back up, but it can take 2 or 3 months. So. SSI does have work incentives attached to them. Carla, could you talk a little bit more or give an example of some of the work, what would be examples of these work incentives?
So one of the work incentives for SSI is a student earned income exclusion. If you are a student, you can actually reduce your countable earnings by $2,040 every month. So if you're in school and working, and let's say you're earning $2,000, you're able to subtract all of that. So it looks like you're not receiving any income. You can do this up to $8,230 in a year. That's 2022. That figure will go up every year. It's really a great program.
Okay.
The employment related work expense, we call it ERWIs. These are expenses that you pay out of pocket that aren't reimbursed, that will reduce your accountable earning so that you could keep more of your earnings in your SSI. An example would be transportation, paratransportation. If you need to take, I know in our area, it's Spectran, you can actually ask Social Security to subtract that from your gross earnings. Another thing is attendant care. If you rely on somebody to assist you and you pay for it out of pocket, you can subtract that. Medication copays, another one that people underutilize. It doesn't matter whether it's used at work only. If you need it for your health, they can include it. That's just an example. The other one is implied work expense. This works with SSI. And the beauty of this is that quite a few things are able to be deducted. We don't talk about it much, but it's a wonderful way to keep the majority of that SSI and the cash earnings. That's just an example. But we certainly have other ones that we can look at. Thanks, Nana.
Okay, I didn't catch that, Carla.
Go ahead, go on next.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the break-even point?
Certainly. So for SSI, the break-even point is where your SSI benefits would zero out. So with SSI, your first $85 is ignored. They don't look at it. Anything after that, they say $1 for every $2.
You'll have to continue in one of the.
Sorry about that. So back on track. That was my phone, by the way. Once you're zeroed out, then you wouldn't be receiving any SSI. If you just receive Social Security, supplemental security, you can actually earn up to $1,767 before you have no SSI.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. And then I think this next slide actually talks about what happens in regard to, it's the expedited reinstatement.
So
this
for
for-
expedited reinstatement for SSI.
Yeah.
So for expedited reinstatement, this is an ultimate safety net for a person on benefits. If the case closed due to work, they can apply within 5 years to request that the benefit be restarted. The nice thing about SSI is that as long as you are still receiving Medicaid, you don't need to apply for the expedited reinstatement. As long as you've got that connection, you don't need this. It's in here because It's just part of the policy. But we have found that very few people need to actually go towards it. Again, with SSI, you don't need to be receiving a cash benefit to keep that attachment. Only have to receive the Medicaid, which is automatic, but SSI. If a person did have to apply, you would get 6 months of benefits, which is called provisional, while you make that decision. If they determine that you aren't eligible, you do not have to pay it back. You would keep those 6 months. That's
Okay. So the bottom line is that someone on SSI will have more income available if they than if they didn't work. You know, and this is more, and I'm going to share, I think this has been more of a personal flag. It just means you need to, I think, take a closer look. I do agree with this. I think it's the people who are receiving SSI only and live in an adult foster care home where their entire check goes to the facility for their care. Because if the SSI check goes down, they're going to be looking at their wages to reimburse the home. So it gets really tricky there. That's why it is important to have that conversation. And it's another example of where a benefits plan can really come into play. Now we're going to move over to the Social Security disability and work earnings. Unearned, and this is the one where unearned income does not impact the SSD cash benefits. Work earnings can impact SSD cash benefits. And individuals will either receive full SSDI or SSDI, and earnings are counted in the month worked. Carla, did you have anything to add or?
no, go ahead.
Okay. The work incentives for SSDI, and this is where we go in a little deeper, and this is certainly, again, another part of the benefits plan, is looking at their trial work period and looking at if a person, and we really believe that people are, when we talk to people, they're, you say, have you worked? They may have forgot about that month they spent working, full time 2 years ago, because maybe they got fired or it didn't work, and they just forgot about it and they didn't bring it up. But it is possible they made enough money where it triggered a trial work period or a trial work month. And so that's one of the benefits of the plan too. Again, Carla, I'm going to turn this over to you to talk about the SSDI work incentives.
All right. So the work incentives for both SSI and SSDI are quite similar. The earlies are basically the same. So impairment related work expenses, no differences. I'll just talk about a couple of them for time's sake. I'd like to talk about income averaging. Do we have quite a few people that when they get their benefit planning query, that's the report, they see that their wages are grouped into similar amounts, which aren't necessarily the exact earnings that they turned in. What SSA will do is they will average the earnings for a person. They do this as a helpful favor, because if your earnings happen to be over the substantial gainful activity, which we'll talk about later, you may be working too much to qualify for a benefit. So by averaging it actually reduces the countable earnings to keep you receiving the benefits. It's usually done by 3 months at a time. And it really is a helpful tool. The unsuccessful work attempt is an attempt to work which ends within a 6-month period. Typically, when people begin working, they have lots of support. And once that support ends, the job may become difficult and it causes them to lose their job. In that situation, Social Security will not consider it as part of that trial work, which is a good work incentive to have. Other things could be special conditions, subsidies. Sometimes an employer is paying an individual for services that aren't equaling the value of that job. And in that case, what they will do is Social Security may lower that amount of income level. So it looks like the value is less, which allows them to earn more without it going over the substantial gainful activity level. These are all work incentives that we talk about with the person. Okay.
Okay. The trial work period is the next slide. And one of the things I thought of as I was looking at this is, you know, SSI, one way to look at it is SSI, any type of work activity over $85, it triggers the 2-for-1. That is automatic. We're under Social Security disability. To me, it's there's kind of more of different levels that you go through, and you know, it's the a trial work, you know, period, you know, you have 9 months. What happens after you use your trial work period up, as they don't have to be consecutive, you know, your cash benefit still stays the same. So what happens at that point after that is you move into an area of what they call substantial gainful activity. And Carla, can I toss this one to you?
Sure. So substantial gainful activity, we call it SGA, is something that it's a level of earnings that Social Security sets every year. For 2022, that threshold is 1,350. For a person who is blind, it's a little higher, 2,260. So they use that figure not only to determine whether an individual's disability impacts their ability to work, meaning their decision to receive disability benefits, but also as a way to say, is this person able to work independent of the benefits? And that's the figure that we use. So that's very important. With SSDI, everybody has a 9-month trial work period. After that 9 months, Social Security will look at just the SGA. The work incentives, they reduce the countable earnings as long as the earnings are under the SGA, they will be entitled to a benefit. And that can go on forever. So that's the magic figure that we always look at when we're working with individuals. Okay.
Okay. And so the next area is the extended period of eligibility. Do you want to tackle that one, Carla?
Sure.
Okay,
So.
you're
the
on a roll.
extended-
Go.
The extended period of eligibility. After an individual has their 9 months of child work period, they begin the EPE. We call it short. This begins directly after the 9th month, regardless of what the earnings are. It continues for the 36 months, whether the person's working or not, or whether they're receiving a payment or not. If an individual is earning over that SGA, they would not be entitled to a benefit, but they still are on SSDI. They're protected for that 36 months. So again, SSDI payment, if gross earnings are below SGA, they would get a check. If above, they wouldn't. Any month SGA is achieved, the payment will stop after the EPE. So after that 36 months, if you earn over SGA, your benefit stops. There is one exception. The first month is called the cessation month. You do get a payment that month. The next 2 months is the grace period. You also get a benefit those 2 months. After that, it would stop.
Okay. SSDI case closure. SSDI will not close a person's case until the EPE has ended, the grace period has been completed, and the gross monthly earnings are at or above SGA. But please note, it is important to note that the case closure can occur anytime an individual is found to be medically improved. Carla, how frequently are you seeing people get, one of the things I remember happening with folks is that any type of work activity on their case seemed to tickle a medical review? Or is that still happening?
So what happens is, when an individual goes to work, they do receive a work review. That's just automatic. The medical reviews, as long as they are working with Michigan Rehab, they are not subject to that disability review. Now, if they begin a review and let's say they go to MRS and open a case, that will continue. But as long as there's a vocational goal and you're working towards that employment goal, you should not have the medical review.
Okay.
And if
Okay.
you do, there are ways that we can, work with Social Security to help figure that out.
Okay. So that we make sure that we have enough time for questions. And we've already really gone over some of the information already in the upcoming slides. I am going to move us to the SSDI bottom line. Working Social Security disability beneficiaries are entitled, this is the bottom line, are entitled to 9 months of a trial work period and 36 months of EPE. Are subject to the current SGA, which is 1350 rule after the trial work period. Individuals who earn over SGA after the EPE will trigger a case closure. You can access other incentives during and after an EPE to keep the cash benefits longer and the case open. And this is this is where I wanted us to get to, and this is one of Carla's areas of expertise is the Medicaid and Medicare with work earnings. And I wanted us a chance to talk about that for a few minutes. And it's the continued Medicaid eligibility under 1619B. So Carla, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. So as far as Medicaid goes, the 1619B is particularly for SSI. As we mentioned earlier, because the SSI, the income affects SSI so much, if it does get to where there's no cash benefits, the Medicaid will continue. Once it drops to zero, you slide into the 1619B, as long as a person needs the Medicaid. I always tell folks to contact Social Security when this happens, just to make sure that they've got it on record, that they're still needing it. But that should continue. It's a wonderful work incentive. The important thing to remember is, if you're under this category, your resource limits has to be watched. You can only have $2,000 for an individual. A couple is $3,000. If your resources, your bank accounts, go over that, you are going to be subject to ending the SSI. So that's important to look at. The only other way to lose the Medicaid with SSI is that if your earnings goes over the threshold. The threshold for this year is 40,275. So if your job earnings are higher than this, you could lose your SSI. But as long as you're below, your Medicaid should continue, as long as you're working. That's about it for the Medicaid.
Okay.
For Medicare, it's a little bit different. Medicare can continue up to 93 months after your child work period ends, especially if you're not receiving your cash benefits. As long as you're receiving cash benefits, you're okay. But once those stop, up to 93 months, Medicaid, your Medicare will continue. You may have to pay for your premium, and that would be a payment directly to Social Security. It wouldn't be automatically coming out of your benefit check if you had to pay for it, but it can continue. You are billed quarterly by Medicare or Social Security, actually. And you can request an automatic withdrawal.
Okay. The reporting requirements for SSI and SSDI. And this is a chart for SSI or SSDI. You obviously report work activity, monthly gross earnings, wage changes, work incentives, address changes. I mean, I look at this and think this is kind of common sense. This is what you do. If it's SSI only, if you receive SSI only, you have to remember to include that other, especially specific things that would be considered unearned income. Living situation changes. For example, if you are residing in an AFC home and you leave the AFC and go into your own apartment, unfortunately, your amount of SSI is going to decrease because you are living independently. The other issue is marital status. We do see this where two individuals on SSI get married. They think that, oh, that means my SSI has just doubled, when again, remembering that this is a form of cash assistance, it's readjusted. You don't get double. don't quote me on this. I would say that it's probably about 75%.
Yes.
And but also if you're in the hospital or incarcerated. So for Social Security disability only, you have to report if you have minor child changes or if you are incarcerated or convicted. Reporting best practices, it's best practice to report to your SSA office by the 6th of each month. SSI, you can use a mobile wage reporting app or the phone-in wage reporting system. If it's SSI and SSDI, you can do it in person, postal, fax. Beneficiary types include report consistently, or tips, excuse me, report consistently, keep SSA documents, request your SSI receipts, report to other public agencies. We also, as a Center for Independent Living, we certainly we won't report them, the income for you, but if you're really struggling with doing it, you come in and see us, you know, we certainly will work with you to show you how to do it. So, and I think I hit the time button, Kate, very well. It is about 10:02.
Yeah, and we did get a couple questions. So if anyone else has questions, this is the time to type them in there if you didn't already. And I will read the questions. The first one is, what is the requirement or process to becoming a benefits counselor? Also, does every state have benefits counselors? Can you work part-time? And is it also considered a work from home job? Multiple parts.
Well, I can, there is a lot, so I might miss some. So Kate, you might need to prompt me. I can tell you what our experience is. Our benefit planners all work full-time. Part of that is because they may have some other responsibilities here. But they also, though, we do keep them busy. Ours are certified, and that's because we believe the training is pretty intense, and Carla can speak to this herself. She went through it. There's a couple different trainings. Some go, it's called the CWIC, and it is through, I think it's through Virginia, the University of Virginia, or Virginia Tech. And we picked Cornell because it was at that time that we found it. It was the one that was online, and they've been doing it for about 15 years. Can it be done from home? Yes, it can be, because you can thank COVID for that, because we had a really good trial experience with. We continued to do benefits planning during COVID when we had to work remotely. It was a little bit more of a challenge because we had some individuals who didn't have access to a computer, so we couldn't do the Zoom link. You know, you still wanted, it's still nice to have that face-to-face contact. But yes, it can be done. So did I miss any of the parts of that question, Kate?
Nope, I think you got it all. The other question we have is, what is student earned income exclusion? I just can backtrack to that and give us a little more information.
Okay.
Yeah, so the student earned income exclusion is either a blind or a disabled individual who is a student regularly attending school, college, or university, or any course of vocational or technical training. They can have limited earnings that are not counted against the SSI benefits. The maximum amount for the income exclusion per student for this year is the $2,040 per month. And then for the year, it's maxed at $8,230. Once you hit that max, you can't subtract anything more. But that's what that is. It's a work incentive to allow a student to keep the SSI and their earnings. It's a great program.
Yeah, and Carla, one of the things that I thought of while you were talking about those earlier was, do you have to just know about those incentives or, have a planner that can help you with those? Or do they prompt you to look in to see if you qualify for any of those exclusions or incentives, excuse me?
When you say they,
Social
that you-
Security.
I will say, by my experience, Social Security doesn't give you a lot of these prompts. You kind of are having to figure it out as you go. We receive a lot of calls, and individuals are, I wish I would have, seen you years ago, before I received this $30,000 overpayment. A lot of these problems that you face can be stopped if they're informed. And that's what we're all about. Informing the person of their rights and these work incentives to help them to become as financially independent as possible. That's why we're here. And we'll do what we can to help them out.
Thank you. Diane asked if we could get a copy of the slides. I don't have a problem with that. Diana and Carla, do you have any problem with that?
No problem.
We'll make sure that happens. And then there's a question about MRS having locations in other states. So Michigan Rehab Services is located only in Michigan, but every state does have its own vocational rehab agency. So if you are in a different state or you have someone that that's in a different state and you need access to that, we can always help you get connected to the agency that is like ours in whatever state you're looking into.
Okay, actually, I think your question actually prompted, I think that there was a question regarding benefits planning in other states. I think that was part of the original question that was asked of me.
Okay, go
And
ahead.
I just want to say, there is benefit planners in other states. It is a huge field, and it's a growing field, leaps and bounds. So they may not call it benefits planner. They may call it, some people, I've seen the term financial services. Or sometimes you see the CWIC, the work incentive practitioners. It's just growing leaps and bounds. It's a way to help people. I know for our team, we are actually, Cornell is doing additional certifications like regarding youth services, because, we have the individuals, the youth who are receiving SSI, in part because of their age and their disability. They're also doing another program regarding veteran benefits. It can create a barrier. It's an understandable issue, and it's one that can be worked with, because, people become very fearful, and we understand that, and let's try to work through it. So.
Perfect. The next question is, can SSDI benefits ever run out?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question exactly, but I can say that as long as you are eligible, you're going to continue to receive it.
Yeah, one of the things too that I think you and I have talked about, Carla, too, and I don't think we mentioned it when we were going through the script, is sometimes for people who are on SSI and they're working over a period of time, they're actually starting to contribute towards, Social Security, and they could become eligible for SSDI down the road. If they they still need to meet all the requirements, but that is a benefit for someone on SSI going to work. No.
Okay, and then one more question. We'll squeeze it in here. This question is, this person says their Social Security, their SSI was cut because of working too much. They like working, but what if later on they get hurt really bad or aren't able to work? Will they be able to get back on SSI?
Yes, as long as the SSI is continuing through the Medicaid, you should be able to get back on it if your income drops below. Yes, so that is a yes.
Yep,
If
and
the
that's probably,
SSI
oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
If the SSI's been completely ended, meaning your resources have caused it to end, that's a little bit different. But I'd be happy to answer that directly with the person,
Okay.
because I think
And-
there's some more personal information that we could gather.
Mhm. And that's a perfect example of why benefits counseling is important, because those general answers don't always apply to each individual. So making sure that we can get your specific, the customer's specific information related to their benefits that they're receiving, and then their employment, and the benefits counselors can help really give us a clearer picture of what to expect when going to work. So with that, we are out of time. I thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Diana and Carla, for all of your knowledge and passing that on to us. And I don't know if there's a survey or anything after this. Lots of times there is. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first Friday in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.